Welcome back to the Andrew and Ian Show. I'm Andrew Sork here again with Ian. Hi, Ian. It is it was the second to last week of the regular season, college football, and we thought at this point of the year things would be settled out with college football. There wouldn't be as much chaos. Nope, it's just chaos every fucking week, man. But how you doing this evening, man?
Doing really good. Like I said the last time, I'm a purveyor of chaos, and I love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to see it. Uh, but it's like man, it sucks for my college pick'em league that I'm in because I mean no one does well in that league this year because there's been so much chaos. Our winner this week was 7-3. That's how fucking chaotic it is. Normally our winners are like 8-2, 9-1, 10-0 every week, but this year it's been we haven't had a single person go 10-0, and usually we get someone to do it. Um, at least once a year. But anyways, let's get right into it because there was also some chaos in the NFL, and we'll kick off right here. Thursday night football. We had the Browns hosting the Steelers, and the Browns getting the upset win here over the Steelers, 24-19, in what was effectively a comeback for the Browns. Well, actually, it wasn't even a comeback necessarily, but it was just more of a it was just like they controlled the game pretty much. The Steelers took off with a pretty early lead, and then eventually later in the fourth quarter, the Browns come back, they score a touchdown, and then they come back, not that long after and kick a field goal to end the first. They go into halftime up 10-3, and then Steelers started to mount a comeback a little bit, but the Steelers' offense is fucking terrible. I mean, obviously, Jameis Winston is not a good quarterback, but this, I don't understand how Cleveland was able to even score any touchdowns on this Pittsburgh defense, which is one of the best defenses in the league. We know, obviously, Pittsburgh's offense is ass, but you would figure that the Steelers' defense against this terrible, terrible Browns offense would not allow even 24 points, even close to that. So it was just a weird game for Pittsburgh to allow such a dog shit offense to get even close to scoring, well, 30 points, really.
Yeah, great point. The Steelers' defense really didn't show up in this one. They had one sack the entire game, and in this one, where it started off a pretty clean game weather-wise, but as we saw in the third quarter, it went from no weather to a snowball rather quickly, and still there was. I mean, they had a pick off of Jameis Winston, but like I said, they had one sack and one pick total. There was two lost fumbles for Cleveland, but at the end of the day, the Steelers' defense just didn't do enough to win this game, and the offense for Pittsburgh, they know that they're not going to be able to put up 30 points every week, and they're not going to get the 400 passing yard games from Russell Wilson every week. But we knew that defense was capable of holding opponents, but now this is another week where we see the Cleveland Browns beat a top team in their division, and just showing chaos, like you said.
Yeah, it's just, and the Steelers' defense is just so good. How they allowed Cleveland to score, more than 14 points realistically, it shouldn't have happened, but here we are. So yeah, awful game from both teams realistically, especially on Pittsburgh's side. I mean, the offense isn't good, but defense, yeah, they need to step that up against this Browns team. Moving on to Sunday, Colts hosting the Lions. You were at this game in person, so I want to get your thoughts on it. But from being at the game, I was I mean I live here in Indy, but I just didn't go to the game. It was from on TV. I mean, it was close, very close to 50-50 Lions and Colts fans. But yeah, Lions win this one 24-6. Jared Goff, 26 for 36, 269 yards. No touchdowns from him this week. Um, but I think more importantly in this game was not necessarily that the offense for the Lions didn't go off like they have been the last couple weeks. It's I think the defense really won this game for Detroit because they made Anthony Richardson look like Helen Keller out there, 11 for 28.
Yeah, this was like you said, I was at this game, and I'd say it was about 50-50 between Colts and Lions fans. I may even give the Colts fans a slight edge, but at the end of the day, this was almost like a home game for Detroit. It was impressive. And even the day before, like I was downtown just going to a bar with the people that I was with, and multiple Jared Goff chants were going off, and you were hearing it through the closed bar doors. It was phenomenal down there. That like it's incredible, and the Lions are loving it too. I mean, like you said, this was a close game to start, but the Lions just started to pull away, and yet again, another shutout in the second half from this defense. And I love that picture of Aaron Glenn chilling on the bench because what else do you have to do as a coordinator when your guys are playing that cohesive as a unit, man?
Yeah, it's amazing because Terrion Arnold wasn't in the game. Kendall Vildor had an abysmal game, but still, the fact that when you have a guy like Kendall Vildor out there who is dog shit as a corner, and you still hold any offense to no touchdowns in a game. And this is 10 straight quarters now of Lions football without a touchdown scored against them. That is how good this defense has been, and they are beat up as hell too. They were missing Terran Arnold. Anzalone's out for at least four more weeks. And obviously you're missing Aiden Hutchinson. But here's the thing too. Aleem McNeil had a hell of a game. The guy that guard that he was going up against, he had a bad day. He had a terrible day. He was getting bullied all day by Aleem McNeil. He played one of the best games of his life this weekend, and I'm glad the Lions locked him up because he's going to be a centerpiece for this defensive front for a long time. And yeah, on the offensive side for the Lions though, Jahmyr Gibbs 2 touchdowns, 21 carries, 90 yards. This kid is insane. He is insane. You think of obviously Montgomery and Gibbs here. Montgomery is more of that power back, Gibbs that speed back, but Gibbs showed some damn power this weekend, just running through a lot of tackles as well.
Yeah, they did kind of swap roles in this one. You saw Gibbs showing a little more of the power, and Montgomery showing a little more finesse with that twirling touchdown he had there at the goal line. But it was a great game from them, regardless of they didn't score 30 points. But again, Aaron Glenn is coaching his unit to a fucking head coaching job right now. It's gonna suck to see him leave.
Him and Ben Johnson, I think they're both gone. Anyways, the Bears hosted the Vikings. The Vikings winning this one 30-27 in overtime. And this was a game that Minnesota was running away with it. They were up 24-10 at the end of the third quarter. Yeah, and then this Bears offense just out of nowhere, Caleb Williams decides to be good, start having actual competent drives put together, and they go down and they're able to get a comeback win here. They recovered an onside kick as well in this game. They had to score a 2-point conversion. They did that, and then obviously they lose in overtime due to a lot of just straight up incompetence on the Bears end. But either way, this was not a good look for this Vikings defense in this game to just basically give up the way they did. Sam Darnold had a pretty decent game. First time in a couple weeks where he's actually looked pretty good. 22 for 34, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns. Solid game from him. And Jordan Addison, really, really great game from him. Did you bench him this week in your fantasy team?
I dropped him. because I got Mike Evans back. Ironically enough, so I guess in a way I did. So you're welcome, Jordan Addison owners.
Yeah, he get 162 yards, a touchdown on 8 receptions. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, this was like you said, the fact that you even asked if I bench Jordan Addison is just it's just telling. It's a sign. I bet you I don't think anyone else picked him up in the league. I bet you if I pick him up again, he falls back down to earth. Regardless, this was a game that told me more about the Bears than it did about the Vikings. The Vikings, I already knew they were fraudulent, and the way their defense collapsed and allowed the Bears to get back into this game in the way that they did, it, it's it just solidified it. We knew the Vikings defense wasn't good, but we knew their offense was capable of, being able to boat race. If the Bears didn't go three and out in overtime, I don't know if the Vikings win this game. But at the end of the day, Caleb Williams showed that he just might be a quarterback for the Bears. But, he the first time in like 4 weeks that he's thrown touchdown passes and he went for almost 400 yards, made some hell of good throws. So he's shaping out to be a good quarterback, but we'll see how he plays next week.
Yeah, he's got a tough task, and we'll talk about that on Thursday's episode. But yeah, the Dolphins hosted the Patriots. The Dolphins winning this one 34-15. Straight up, Tua is him. Tua is him. 29 for 40, 317 yards, 4 touchdowns. Really, really solid game from him. And yeah, just this Miami offense is really scarily good, and they're back in the playoff hunt now. They're 5-6. They still got a hole to dig out of, but I believe actually as of right now they are a wild card team. If not, they're right outside of that wild card spot in the AFC. But yeah, Drake May, another solid outing. Nothing super special. Yet again another pick thrown, but he also did throw for a touchdown in this game. But ultimately, this New England team is just not super, super great offensively. Their offensive line blows, and their defense sucks as well. But yeah, no, I really, really impressed with Tua since coming back, and this was one of his best games since coming back too.
I'm glad that you said something about Tua because this is someone who's coming off a concussion, and he's had multiple concussions throughout his career already. So the fact that he's performing like this still, it's a good sign that he's, still there and he's still a human. He concussions don't change that, but it's showing that maybe there is, little less cause for concern here. But at the end of the day, we all know he's a hard hit away from potentially losing his career. But if he's going to keep playing like this, I understand why Miami wanted him out there, and I understand why Miami was in the position they were in when he wasn't out there. And like you said about New England, they just are not good all around, and Drake May's going to have to find a way to make the best of a shitty situation until they get a competent franchise back there out there in New England.
The Giants hosted the Bucks. The Bucks winning this one 30-7 in a very interesting game. Baker, 24 for 30, 294 yards, no touchdowns. Actually, neither quarterback in this game threw for a touchdown. The only touchdown for New York was on the ground as well. But Baker had a really, really solid game, both running and passing. Just obviously no touchdowns. I loved him doing a little trolling in front of the Giants fans, doing DeVito's little celebration that he always does. So I like to see good trolling like that. But yeah, no, look, it's a game that the Bucks should have won, and they obviously did. But the Bucks aren't that great, but they're still in that fight for the NFC South, and a win like this against a conference opponent. Now, granted, it's a dog shit conference opponent. It still helps, but I believe they're still behind Atlanta right now. So They're fighting for a playoff spot, but they got to start really stringing games together here.
This was by all rights a get right game for the Bucks. I mean, coming off the bye, you just got one of your top wide receivers back from injury in Mike Evans, and like you said, they didn't throw a touchdown through the air in either side, but the every single ball carrier for the Bucks scored a rushing touchdown in this game. Bucky Irving, Rashad White, Baker Mayfield, and Sean Tucker all scored a rushing touchdown. That's about as good as a game as you can get on the ground. Just outside of, an impressive individual performance like we've seen, throughout this week, and we'll get to that one later. But like you said, the Bucs are still in position to fight Atlanta despite being 2 games down and head-to-head scheduling against Atlanta. Now, the Bucs had a really shitty situation in losing Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, but now they're on the mend. They just got off the bye, and let's see if they can string some wins together, and they might steal that division.
Yeah, 4 losses in a row for this team before that bye week, and then they come off the bye, yes, against a bad New York team, but it was a get-right game for them. Gets Mike Evans back in the flow of things, so that helps. And maybe the Bucs can turn around. Now, yes, obviously they don't have the tiebreaker over Atlanta, so they need to outright win their division, and that's going to be tough. But if Atlanta keeps playing the way that they play, there's a chance. There's a chance. The Commanders hosted the Cowboys. The Cowboys winning this one at 34-26 in a comeback victory. With a 3-touchdown and a field goal fourth quarter from the Cowboys here. Dallas went into the half tied. It was a 3-3 game, and then there's a missed extra point from Washington on a touchdown. Then Dallas got the lead, and then Dallas kind of just took over the game from there. Really, really solid fourth quarter all around. They controlled time of possession. The biggest thing was those 2 Jaden Daniels interceptions. Something he's been actually pretty damn good at this year is protecting the ball, and this week he did not.
That was my biggest takeaway from this one is the Commanders' mistakes. Like you said, the missed extra point, and just Jaden Daniels finally breaking a little bit and throwing 2 interceptions. It was barring 24 points in the fourth quarter from this Cowboys team. And the crazy last 2 minutes of this game. This game is a little less scoring and maybe a Washington win, but they were that close to winning and just couldn't do it. They make that extra point, and then they don't have to get the onside kick, and then it doesn't get returned for a touchdown. That changes quite a lot of that game, but at the end of the day, it's not how the chips fell, and Washington now has an even bigger uphill climb back to Philly, but Dallas, you kind of fucked yourself out of the first overall pick.
I don't think they were going to get it anyways. I mean, there's so many teams I think that are actually worse than Dallas right now competing for that, including Carolina, who almost beat the Chiefs this weekend. Carolina hosting the Chiefs. Chiefs winning this one 30-27 on a last-second field goal to avoid going to overtime with Carolina, who mounted a second-half comeback because KC went into the half up 20-9, with Carolina only kicking field goals up to that point. And you think, okay, well, KC's gonna blow out this Carolina team. I mean, Carolina sucks. KC's defense is good, but and Carolina's defense is terrible. But this Kansas City offense, man, they've been struggling all year. And look, this was Mahomes' best game this year. He didn't throw a pick, 3 touchdowns, 27 for 37, 269 yards. That's his best game this year statistically, and their offense still didn't even look that good. And then the defense kind of crumbled also in that second half where, Carolina came back and, you were looking at overtime with Carolina in a game that you should not be doing that. Kansas City was an 11.5 point favorite coming into this game. That's how bad Carolina is. The fact that the Chiefs could not cover tells you just how bad the Chiefs' offense really truly is, and how bad that defense collapsed.
The defense, like you said, finally collapsed. This is a game that should not have gone as close as it was. They were up 20-9 at half. It's an 11 point. You're already covering the spread at halftime. And you win by 3? Like, Kansas City, you had one of the best defenses in the league, and that was carrying your team for a while. And now Patrick Mahomes has, like you said, one of his best statistical games this season. And you just barely beat Carolina. My thing is, if it wasn't Mahomes' fault this time, who was it? I mean, Mahomes threw for 269 yards, and he ran for another 60 on 5 carries. So he did his work. Kareem Hunt ran for 68 yards on 16 carries. So the rushing game was not there outside of Mahomes. And the offensive line gave up 5 sacks to this Carolina defense. That's abysmal. You just can't have that happen. And like you said, for them to be unable to cover that, and for them to be unable to hold at least an 11-point lead from halftime over Carolina, it's grounds for concern. This Kansas City team, we all knew they were not as good as their record says, but this is just, the icing on the cake for me.
Yeah, look, I don't think the Chiefs are gonna make. I don't think they're gonna make it to the Super Bowl if they keep playing the way they have really all year. And you have Mahomes having his greatest game this year statistically, and they still almost lose because the defense choked, and the offense isn't really all that good. So I don't see them winning the AFC this year, but playoff football completely different than the regular season. We know that, so I'm not gonna get too far ahead of myself. But if I had to put money right now on who's gonna win the AFC, it's gonna go on either Buffalo or Baltimore before I ever even think about Kansas City. Houston hosted the Titans. The Titans winning this one 32-27, and this game, what I more take away from is Houston. We have a problem, quite literally. There's so many things that you could point to on why Houston lost this game. First of all, C.J. Stroud didn't have a great game. The offensive line was terrible in this game as well, giving up that safety at the end of the game really, really hurt the Texans there. But yeah, C.J. Stroud, 2 picks. I mean, Joe Mixon, 14 carries, 22 yards. That's your best rusher? Jesus Christ. I mean, the only bright spot really for this Texans team was Nico Collins having himself a really solid game. But the defense didn't look good against one of the worst offenses in the league in Tennessee, allowing them to score 30 points in this game. Cause for concern. It was an ugly game for Houston, and there's a lot of problems with this team right now. A lot.
Yeah, Houston, we have a major problem. And I'm looking straight at the rushing yards, and just you had 17 attempts and you had 40 yards between Joe Mixon and CJ Stroud. So you're telling me that the Detroit Lions can run the football all over the Titans, and then they barely beat the Texans.
Well,
the Texans.
The Texans don't have a Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I'm just saying.
There's still a decent offense, and Joe Mixon has been having crazy good performances for them. But again, he averaged 1.6 yards a carry, no touchdowns, and a long of 8 yards. That's not a recipe for success, and then you do that against outside, of Jacksonville being Jacksonville, the worst team in your division. Again, you're not going to win games, and this is exactly how they lost. Like you said, you don't give up that safety, they're in a better position, Now it's not a 5-point game, it's a You go down, you kick a field goal, you go to overtime. You don't want to have overtime in this situation anyway, but you lost anyway for Houston. And for Tennessee, like I said about Dallas, you kind of just fucked yourself out of the first overall pick. But with how bad Tennessee is, they're capable of playing themselves right back into it.
Yeah, and look, Tennessee's got the second best defense in the league, at least in terms of yards allowed per game. They're right behind Philly with that. Um, but yeah, this was a big problem overall for Houston, and they've been struggling offensively against teams that are really good against the run too. Um, so yeah, it's an ugly game for Houston. They're still on top of their division because the rest of their division blows, and really the Colts losing makes them feel a little bit more comfortable with losing to Tennessee in this game, because if the Colts beat the Lions, now you're looking at the Colts being just a game behind Houston. Yes, Houston has the tiebreaker with both wins over the Colts this year, but it still helps that the Colts lost. But either way, not a good look. A lot of concern for this Texans team. The Raiders hosted the Broncos. The Broncos winning this one 29-19. And man, but I'll keep saying it. Sean Payton, Bo Nix, what a fucking combination, man. They are on fire offensively. Bo Nix went 25 for 42, 273 yards, 2 touchdowns. Solid all-around game from Bo Nix and that receiving group in general. Cortland Sutton getting both those touchdowns as well. And look, the Raiders, they're not good. Obviously, we talk about it every week. Max Crosby's the only, good part about this team right now. But he doesn't want to go and win a Super Bowl, so he's just gonna stick with Las Vegas. Could have came home, Max. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, overall though, good game from the Broncos, and they're a playoff team. They really truly are a playoff team, especially if Bo Nix can keep this up.
Vegas, if you have to have Desmond Ridder come into a game, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, granted, it was because Gardner Minshew broke his collarbone, and you personally can speak on that, Andrew. But
Yeah. It's not fun.
It's not a good situation for Vegas. You had two really bad quarterbacks to start, and now both of them are on IR, and now you have Desmond Ridder. That's your go-to. A bad season just got worse, and like you said, Max Crosby, you should have just came home, man. I would have walked. At this point, you're not winning games now. You're not winning games 5 years down the road. You may win a game or two 10 years down the road, but this is your career, man. You're getting done dirty like Barry Sanders and Megatron at this point.
Yeah, but at least Barry Sanders and Megatron had winning seasons in their careers. I don't think Max Crosby ever has had a winning season yet, and
I think the Raiders have.
I don't.
Not to the caliber of.
I still don't understand his want to stay with Las Vegas. I genuinely don't understand it, but it is what it is. The Packers hosted the Niners. The Packers with a massive win here, 38-10. Now, look, injuries aren't an excuse for losing games. Look at the Lions. They are beat up, but they're still winning games. One of the most beat up teams in the league, especially on that defensive side. Losing, your two best defensive players in Anzalone and obviously Aiden Hutchinson. They're out. One's not out for the entire season. One is, but still, regardless, this Niners offense is beat up. Obviously, Brock Purdy was out in this game as well, but I don't think it would have mattered. This Green Bay defense is pretty damn good. They're not an elite defense, but they are a good defense. And the offense was rolling for Green Bay. Jordan Love had an okay game. He went 13 for 23, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns. But it all came on the ground. All the offensive work for Green Bay came on the ground. Jacobs, 26 carries, 106 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just all round solid game from Green Bay. And San Fran, 5-6 now. If you would have told me that at the start of the year, I kind of would have laughed that, you tell me week 12 that they'd be 5-6. I would have laughed at that, but here we are.
Josh Jacobs, as a Lions fan, I got to give you some respect, man. You won me my fantasy week this week. But regardless of that, he had a hell of a performance on the ground, and 3 rushing touchdowns in one game is something that not only have I been looking for, just for my fantasy sake, I've been looking for him to have a good game like this pretty much all year. I don't think he's had a game where he's had multiple scores on the ground, much less three. Now, I could be wrong, but at the end of the day, he's starting to really get rolling there in Green Bay, and they're looking pretty damn good. Now, we saw what happened, with Detroit and Lambeau and weather, blah, 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 blah. We knew that Green Bay was still a good team then. I'm not going to discredit them at all. But San Fran, you're on the very outside of the playoffs, looking very far in. And what once was an NFC favorite is now you're a long shot to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, look, the teams that are ahead of them in the wild card spots right now are multiple games above 500. Obviously Minnesota, Green Bay, and then Washington. Those are your 3 wild card teams right now in the NFC. They're all multiple games above 500. Your only chance now, if you're San Fran, is that both Seattle and Arizona start collapsing and you figure it the fuck out with your injuries, because that's the only way you're making the playoffs now. Because you're not gonna. I don't think you're gonna topple any of those wild card teams over the next few weeks. So it's gonna be interesting to see what San Fran does. But it's urgency for them. They have to win this division. If not, say goodbye to playoffs.
Yeah, and say at this point it's like win out or you're done for them. They don't have to necessarily win every game, but damn near everyone.
Gotta finish with a positive record, because everyone that's ahead of them, except for Washington, is pretty much guaranteed a winning record at this point. I mean, the Lions secured it last week, and then the Vikings secured their winning record this week, and Green Bay, they're a win away from securing a over 500 record, and you're gonna have. It's not like the AFC where you can make a wild card team with a sub 500 record this year. You're gonna have to win a lot of games coming out the rest of the year. Seattle hosted the Cardinals, and this was probably one of the better things that could happen for San Fran. But Seattle wins this one 16-6. It was a abysmal game from both these teams. Geno Smith had a typical Geno Smith kind of day, where he throws for a decent amount of yards, throws a pick, throws a touchdown, whatever. Kyler Murray, after having an incredible last 2 weeks, fell flat this week. 24-37, 285 yards, 1 interception. And they couldn't run the ball against the Seattle team that is not good against the run. And you can't run the ball, and all you can give me is 2 field goals in this entire game. Lots of concern there for Arizona, who was getting hot, and then this Seattle team, who is not that good, comes out of nowhere, and they don't even body bag you. They just do a good enough job containing you, and your defense did a good job in this game. I'm not like Arizona's defense actually played a solid game. Their offense is what lost this game, though.
My point of emphasis for this game for the Arizona offense is, why is Trey McBride, a tight end, getting 15 targets? Now, granted, he was averaging 11.1 yards a reception, while Marvin Harrison Jr., your rookie first-round wide receiver, averaging 15.7 yards per reception, is getting 6 targets. Explain that to me.
I couldn't I can't why are you not utilizing Marvin Harrison Jr.? Why are you not throwing him the ball more?
Yeah, I don't know if Marvin
Is
Harrison
this
Jr.
is this as
just
Kyler can't work with Marvin, or is this a fucking scheme problem with their offensive coordinator?
I, did Marvin Harrison Jr. not accept Kyler Murray's friend request on Xbox or something to play Call of Duty? I don't know. This is if I'm Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm a rookie with the talent that I have, and I'm only getting 6 targets. Granted, I only came down with 3 of them, but again, I'm a first round, you know, rookie wide receiver. You better be utilizing me. I'm supposed to be the pick that changes the trajectory of this franchise. And we've seen that he can put up 100 yards receiving easily. He's done it this season. Just get him the ball. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, look, he's a Marvin Harrison Jr. is a really good receiver, but they're just not utilizing him. I don't know if it's a Kyler just doesn't want to throw to him thing, or fucking it's a scheme thing. But either way, your tight end should not be getting 15 targets to your best wide receiver having only 6. It just should not fucking happen at all ever. It doesn't happen in any of the good or elite offenses, unless you're Kansas City, but you're not even an elite offense. But really, your only target in Kansas City right now is Travis Kelce, so kind of understandable. But either way, not a good look for for Arizona offensively. The Rams hosted the Eagles. Eagles winning this one 37-20. And yeah, Saquon 255 yards on 26 carries, 2 touchdowns as well. Having an unbelievable season this year. New York, you just had to be a cheap ass and not pay him. Just saying. Your offense could be a lot better this year if you wouldn't be a cheap piece of shit. But anyways, yes, solid game from the Eagles. Obviously, the Rams are a pretty beat up team, but they're doing what they can with what they got. Um, Matt Stafford had a pretty solid game. It's just this Eagles offense was just way too much for this Rams defense that is not that good to handle.
Giants fans are seeing ghosts right now. This franchise finally decides to get rid of Daniel Jones after they trade or get rid of or let Saquon Barkley just walk, and then he does this. This is incredible. I mean, Philly has one of the best offensive lines in the league, and they've had that. And now they get one of the best running backs in the league. And this is the performance we've seen that he could do, but 255 yards is just ridiculous. This man went Ashton Genty mode.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then last night, Monday Night Football, we had the Chargers hosting the Ravens. The Ravens winning this one 30-23. SoFi Stadium gets 2 home games back to back nights. It's very rare, either team or both teams get a home game when they share a stadium on the same weekend. But yeah, the both teams lost, but I like what I saw in this game from Baltimore against one of the best defenses in the league in LA, and they put up 30 points on them. And LA hasn't allowed 30 points really a whole lot this year. They're again, like I said, one of the better defenses in the league. And look, LA was in this game all game long, but then it started to get out of hand in the fourth quarter where they allowed two touchdowns back to back, and then they tried to mount a comeback, but it was just too little, too late, and Baltimore wins this one 30-23. I think the biggest problem in this game for LA was the fact that they didn't attack this team through the air like they should have. Yes, Justin Herbert threw it 36 times, but he only had 21 completions, 218 yards, no touchdowns in this game. But this Baltimore secondary is not good, and you did not do a good enough job against a bad secondary to get yourself in ahead in this game. I think they needed to have a bigger passing attack, and they did that this week, but they just couldn't execute it well, and that I think is kind of a big problem with this LA team is that when you have to, when you go against a team that isn't that good, especially in the secondary, but just against the pass in general, you have to attack them, but you have to execute, and they did not execute in this game.
Yep. My biggest point of emphasis for this one was the just missed opportunities, specifically from the Chargers offense. I mean, Quentin Johnston had 5 targets and 0 receptions. He put up a goose egg, and he dropped a wide open pass on 4th down that I think probably would have gone for a touchdown. And that might have been the difference in this game, but at the end of the day, J.K. Dobbins left this game around halftime for the Chargers, and that's kind of what ended up being the difference here. I would say for their offense, outside of, the miscues and the drops and all of that, this was, he was averaging 6.7 yards a carry before he came out, and outside of him, no one else had over 30 yards rushing on LA. So it was a good performance from Baltimore, like you said, against a really good defense, and for them to put up 30 points, and they haven't been good on the road this season. They were 3-3 on the road coming into this one. So for them to win this game, where I was confident in the Chargers defense to really keep them in this. I'm confident that the Ravens might be able to steal the AFC North from the Steelers, especially if they lose to the Browns again.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely possible. It's definitely in play. But yeah, the drops were the biggest problem because I mean Justin Herbert was having a solid game. It's just it didn't look solid because guys were dropping passes left and right. And then yeah, obviously J.K. Dobbins leaving before the end of the first half definitely was not a ideal situation there either. So now moving on over to college football. Friday night we had San Jose State hosting number 24 UNLV. UNLV winning this one 27-16. Look, UNLV they're going to be playing in the Mountain West Championship. I think they have that sealed up in the second spot there. I'm not entirely sure there. Let me just look at that real quick. Oh yeah, it's locked up. So it's going to be Boise State versus UNLV. That's going to be a hell of a matchup in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, solid game from UNLV. I didn't actually really watch this game. I just kind of watched the highlights, and that was kind of it. Because I don't really care about Mountain West football, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, solid game from UNLV. Did what they needed to do. Took care of business.
I'm in the same boat. Didn't really watch this one because I don't care about the Mountain West outside of, do they have a ranked team and do I need to cover them really? But like you said, this was a decent performance, and UNLV, they're 9-2, and they're going to play Boise. They're going to get another crack at them. And who knows? It might go UNLV's way this time. They only lost by 5, and it could happen. So chaos is around us, so.
And the way Boise's been playing lately, I'm not impressed. So UNLV might be able to sneak with that one. But anyways, Saturday we had some frauds exposed. Number 2, Ohio State hosting number 5, Indiana. Ohio State wins this one 38-15. And yeah, Indiana's frauds. Look, there's a lot of talk, especially after the game, like, oh, Ryan Day's classless for scoring a touchdown with 35 seconds left when you're up 31-15. Well, here's the thing. Kurt Signetti, you gotta learn this real quick when you're playing big boy ball. Don't go for 2 when you're already down by a lot. You broke an unspoken rule of football. I'm just saying. If you don't want someone who's already up multiple scores on you to score a touchdown with 35 seconds left in the game after you did an onside kick to try and get back in the game after going for two when you're already down a ton. Yeah, don't break that unspoken rule. Ohio State would have nailed it then if you would have just kicked the extra point and then done a normal kickoff. But here we are. Um, but yeah, Ohio State just absolutely exposed the shit out of Indiana. And I told you they were frauds. They haven't played a real team all year. They finally played a real team, and they basically lost. Realistically, it was like a 31-15 loss. I mean, but when you're petty, you're petty. You're gonna get petty back to you. So yeah, Indiana, they're frauds. Plain and simple. 153 yards of total offense against the best defense that they've played all year. Kind of, every single metric in this game shows you just how fraudulent Indiana has been. And look, I hate Ohio State, but I'm glad they exposed this Indiana fraud team.
Indiana, welcome back to reality. You were not going to go undefeated. You were not going to beat Ohio State. And like you said, Brian Day can be petty too. Kristen Gandy, you don't want Ohio State to score another touchdown on you. Maybe score more than 7 points throughout the first 3 quarters of the game. I'm glad Ohio State won, but like you, I don't want to see Ohio State succeed in any real capacity, but I'm glad someone finally put Indiana in their place.
Yeah, they are the frauds that I've been saying they have been all year. Um, because first of all, Ohio State's the only team that is multiple games above 500 that they've played, and the only ranked team that they've played, and the only team that isn't ass that they've played. And when you play ass all year, and then you finally face a real team, you're gonna get exposed. So, anyways, number 3, Texas hosted Kentucky. Texas winning this one 31-14. Quinn Ewers had a meh game. I mean, 191 yards, 20 for 31, 2 touchdowns. Not his best performance this year. Not his worst either. But this Kentucky defense it's solid. I mean, they've held teams to low scores this year. This is one of the bigger scores that Kentucky's allowed this year. But yeah, no, Texas they just handled business and they did everything that they needed to do.
This was finally a game where Kentucky didn't play a SEC contender close. I was kind of shocked when I saw that Texas was up 24-7 going into half. I was like, holy shit. Kentucky really is just bad. And they aren't, or they're not capable of playing every SEC or good SEC team close. Good on them for getting a good win, continuing to show that they were ready for the SEC, and they're ready for the SEC championship. And depending on the result of the game next week, we could see them back-to-back weeks against A&M. But I don't know if that's going to go that, but that's, neither here nor there, and that's for a different time.
Yeah, basically what would have to happen for Texas and Texas A&M to play each other 2 weeks in a row. One would be obviously this coming weekend, and then in the SEC championship game. Actually, no, it's impossible because no. So they would need Georgia and Tennessee to both lose, and then Texas A&M beats Texas this week, and that'd be it. That's I think the only way Texas A&M actually gets into the SEC title game is if both those teams lose. But Tennessee, if they lose to Vanderbilt, that helps Texas A&M a lot. Georgia Tech, though, I don't know. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia, but yeah, there are a lot of implications. A lot of implications to get through this weekend and tiebreakers to sort out. So, yeah. Anyways, Minnesota hosted number 4 Penn State. Penn State having a comeback in this one, 26-25. It was a messy game from Penn State. You're number 4 in the country and you're playing this close with Minnesota. Now, granted, Minnesota's been heavily underrated this year. They're not a great team by any means, but they've played a lot of good teams close this year. They've beaten some good teams as well. So, I mean, yeah, we've been underrating Minnesota a lot this year. But Penn State, man, this is a game where you need to blow them out, and you just simply didn't, and you had to come back to win it.
Yeah, they had to have a comeback, and they're down 19-16 at halftime. And this is, you got to give Minnesota credit. I think they're better than their record says. And PJ Fleck coming over from Western Michigan, I didn't like you because, I went to Eastern, so it's a rivalry thing. But you're doing some real good work over there in Minnesota, and you've had some close losses here for Minnesota. They had a close loss to Michigan, now a close loss to Penn State. But they're a really decent football team. They're not great by any means, like you said, but they're coming really close to some major wins here.
Yeah, they definitely are. Yankee Stadium, number 6 Notre Dame was the home team to number 19 Army, and this game was over in the first quarter. Notre Dame wins this one 49-14. Honestly, I was surprised that Army even got in the end zone in this game. They got in the end zone twice. One of them was garbage time, but it was a 14-7 game. But to be honest with you, I turned this game off after the first quarter. I was like, yeah, 14-7, and we're just past the halfway point of the first quarter. I'm gonna go watch some other games now, and yeah, kind of made sense to do that. But yeah, Notre Dame, huge win. I mean, obviously, Army, they haven't played anyone, but they've been dumpstering every single team that they played. Also, Notre Dame's got hell of a fucking run game. Love, 7 carries, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's over 18 yards a carry. Absolutely insane. And Love has been one of the better running backs in college football this year. And I believe he's only a sophomore, so he's still got time to develop. But yeah, Notre Dame, I don't know really what they are as a team, but I can tell you one thing right now is they have a really good run game and their defense is really good, but I need to see more out of this offense against actually good teams.
Army, you met the same fate that Navy did against Notre Dame. This is a game that if Army won, that it would have been even more chaos, and it would have been a really fun game to try and see Notre Dame defenders try and justify, especially now that they don't have a conference championship to kind of bolster that record. And a 2-loss Notre Dame losing to Army and Northern Illinois is kind of less confident to be put in the playoffs over some teams. But depending how the rest of the college football world turns out, I think a 2-loss Notre Dame could still end up, but it'd be hard to ignore an undefeated Army team over a 1-loss Boise team at that point, or a multi-loss Boise team should UNLV upset Boise in the Mountain West. Now, unfortunately, because Army lost, we're not going to see that, but at the end of the day, I'm still a little shaky on Notre Dame. Let's see how they'll play against, a good, competent playoff team, now that I'm almost positive that they'll play in the playoffs. But they're 10-1, so a win is a win.
Yeah, and they're gonna finish 11-1 because we'll talk about it on Thursday's episode. But they got to play USC next week, and yeah, we already know how that one's gonna go for Notre Dame. But one game that we did not expect, and this is where the chaos begins, really, from this weekend in college football. Yes, you obviously had Minnesota playing Penn State close, which was chaos, but this is where the chaos really begins. Oklahoma hosting number 7 Alabama, and Oklahoma getting the win here, 24-3. One of the worst performances from Alabama that I've ever seen in a very, very long time. I mean, since really the pre-Saban era, I haven't seen a performance that bad from Alabama, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And Alabama's now out of the college football playoffs as it stands right now. They're 8-3. They're 13th ranked. I mean, it's not a good look. But But yeah, Oklahoma, solid game from them. They're finally racking up a couple SEC wins over the last couple weeks. They're 2-5 now in conference, but uh, yeah, Alabama. I don't know what the hell happened. Jalen Milroe, 3 picks, 11 for 26, 164 yards, no touchdowns in this game. Obviously, because they only scored a field goal. Oklahoma's defense, while not even that good this year, was able to hold this very talented roster against of Alabama to just 3 points. Is Kalen DeBoer a real coach, or I don't know what's going on with Alabama, man. They had some really ugly losses this year, and ugly wins, to be honest.
Alabama. All I have to say about this is
What is that? What the fuck is that?
there's no other way to put it. It's embarrassing. You have 3 points. You have 3 points in the first quarter. And Oklahoma, their defense, who, as far as I've seen, is pretty eviscerated through injuries. And they just weren't good anyway. Beat
Yeah.
you by 21 points. Just
Yeah.
terrible, terrible game. And like you said, this is probably the worst game from an Alabama team we've seen in our lifetime.
Yeah, it's well, worst Alabama game I can at least think of in my lifetime. I mean, I can't think of a time where Alabama was held to single digit points. Granted, I'm only 26 years old, so but I didn't really start watching college football unless, well, I mean, I was watching college football when I was a kid, but the only games I was watching was Michigan games. I didn't start watching outside of Michigan games until I was like 10 or 11 years old. So, but even then, I can't recall a game where Alabama only scored, a single digit worth of points. And yeah, it's embarrassing. And Oklahoma, I mean, it's a nice win. You're bowl eligible now. People were kind of wondering with Oklahoma, are they even gonna make a bowl game this year? But now with a win over Alabama, they secured that, and now they got LSU this coming week. So, hey, they might finish 7-5 because LSU blows. Miami, number 8 Miami hosted Wake Forest. Miami winning this one 42-14. Typical, just Miami beating up on shitty teams. Win. Cam Ward, 27 for 38, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns. You expected more yards from him this week, but, he's already, in the Heisman race. He doesn't need to really stat pad all that much. But, just another win for Miami. I got nothing really special to say about it. They played well. They finally played well against a bad team.
It's a good rebound for Miami. And, I mean, like you said, Cam Ward in the Heisman race doesn't need to stat pad entirely that much, but it'd be nice to see a little more passing yards against a lesser Wake Forest team. But at the end of the day, your team got the win. You won big, and it was over in the first half. I mean, literally, Wake Forest didn't score another point in the second half, and you were up 20-14 at half. So if you didn't score another point, you would have had another win. So a good game for Miami, and it's a game where the refs didn't need to influence it. So it shows that Miami can win a game outside of that, even if it is against a lower opponent.
Florida hosted number 9 Ole Miss, and Florida, the upset win 24-17 in a game where, Florida came back to win it. Sort of. I mean, it was 14-14 going in the half, but it was 14-7 at one point, and then right before half, Florida ties it up. But it was a game that was looking like it was going to go Ole Miss's favor till the fourth quarter, and then they just couldn't do anything. Jackson Dart, 2 picks in this game, 24 for 41, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Terrible game. But I think more. First of all, Florida is just out here just destroying people's hopes for the playoffs. I mean, beating LSU last week, now beating Ole Miss. They've just been, and they were a dumpster fire at the start of the year. everyone thought, their coach is going to get fired. Billy Napier, he's going to get fired at the end of the year. He's kind of turned the ship around a little bit, and now they're sitting 6-5 with a 4-4 conference record. I mean, obviously they're not playing for anything this year, but um, he's kind of turned it around the last few weeks, especially beating some really good teams, and now beating the number 9 team in the country. It's an ugly loss. Lane Kiffin, I don't know what the fuck you were doing, but here we are.
Yet another season where Ole Miss shoots themselves in the foot with the 12 gauge shotgun to blow away their playoff chances. But like you said, I got to give Florida their flowers. I don't think LSU was going to make the playoffs before they lost to Florida. They were sitting at 3 losses anyway. But now with that 4th loss, they're guaranteed to not make the playoffs. And Florida now is bowl eligible like Oklahoma. And who knows? They could. I mean, they are looking like they are going to be 7-5. Because, oh boy, might as well have a bye week next week for Florida.
Yeah, you might as well. Number 10, Georgia hosted UMass. Georgia winning this one 59-21. And, Georgia was struggling in the first half especially. I mean, it was 21-14 UMass at one point. And then at halftime it was 28-14 Georgia. Or it was 21-14 Georgia, not 21-14 UMass. But yeah, Georgia struggled in this first half against UMass. The defense was not playing that well against UMass's very, very, very bad offense. One of the worst offenses in the FBS this year. And they still, I mean, they struggled, but they found a way to, especially in that second half, to really just pull away. Carson Beck had himself a great day, 20 for 31, 297 yards, 4 touchdowns. I don't think he's all that great, but he's still a good quarterback. But yeah, it was an ugly first half for Georgia, but they were able to figure out a way to win.
My biggest takeaway from this one is Carson Beck threw all 4 touchdown passes in the first half. They had
that
3
checks out.
rushing touchdowns on the ground, or from their main running back. I mean, obviously a rushing touchdown was on the ground. In the second half, that's exactly how you win a football game. You take control in the first half, and then you run the clock out in the second half. And if you can get some scores on the ground to solidify that and pad that lead, that's textbook football from Georgia. And it's against a shitty UMass team, but we've seen chaos happen, so it could happen. It didn't, and it's a big win. But like you said, UMass being able to score 21 points is a bit of a concern, but ultimately Georgia won the game.
Yeah, look, I mean, for Georgia, it's kind of a look-ahead spot because they do have, now, yes, Georgia Tech isn't the greatest, but they're pretty solid this year. I think of this game more for Georgia, it was a look-ahead spot, but, yeah, not necessarily a great look either. Number 11, Tennessee hosted UTEP. Tennessee pitching a shutout, 56-0. It's been a while since we've seen Tennessee score that many points, but they were able to do it. Yes, UTEP blows. Tennessee's offense isn't the greatest, but they look great against bad teams, and yeah, that's my takeaway from this game.
The half of the SEC that wasn't on Cupcake Week last week is now on Cupcake Week, and that's about all you can say about this one. UTEP is garbage. Tennessee trying to keep their hopes alive for a potential SEC championship matchup with Texas.
Yeah, they need some help this weekend, but yeah. Wyoming hosted number 12 Boise State. Boise State winning this one 17-13. And this is why I said I'm not really too high on Boise State right now. They are not playing well at all. I mean, Genty's the only good thing about this Boise State team, and even he didn't have a great game against a very, very, very bad Wyoming team. I mean, this is a 2-9 team and you just looked awful against them. Um, in a game where you were heavy favorites. Um, yeah, you were 23 and 25 and a half point favorites going into this game, and you weren't even close to that. And the fact that you have the best running back in college football, and you were only able to put up 17 points against one of the worst defenses in the FBS, really tells me something.
My confidence in Boise State goes down more and more, especially because of the quarterback play from Maddox Madsen. I mean, he's 14 for 26 for only 167 yards. Now, granted, he didn't have an interception, but he didn't also throw a touchdown at all. And he also ran for -6 yards on 5 carries. So, you know, not the greatest performance from him. I mean, Ashton Genty carried the ball 19 times and ran for 169 yards, averaged 8.9 a carry. So it's a decent performance. He only had the one score and a long of 61 yards. So it's a decent performance. I just think you'd like to see him score a little more. Like you said, it's not a good Wyoming team, and they're one of the worst defenses in the FBS.
Yeah, this is why I just don't have a lot of confidence in this Boise State team right now, and why they are sitting at one of the bye week spots is beyond me. Now, granted, the Big 12 ain't good, but Boise ain't that good either. So, I mean, who the fuck do you really put there? I mean, I get you want to give a conference champion that fucking fourth seed, but honestly, give me the runner up the Big Ten or the SEC, depending on who is what there. But yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in this Boise State team at all now, especially after a bad performance like this on the offensive side of the ball. Virginia hosted number 13 SMU. SMU wins 33-7, and SMU is kind of like Notre Dame for me. It's just like I don't really know who they are because they haven't really played anyone this year. I mean, they've sure played better teams than Indiana, but yeah, I got to see it against a real team. But they're in the playoff as of right now. I mean, they're a 10 seed right now. They'd be facing Notre Dame, so that'd be an interesting matchup. Just because we don't really know what either of those teams are. But yeah, no, look, it was a solid game from SMU. Again, I want to see them against a real team. But I mean, from what I can tell, their offense is really, really solid from watching them all year. I mean, their defense, I don't really truly know, but I want to see SMU's offense against a real defense. That's kind of my takeaway still, really all season for them has been that.
My thing is, who are they getting in the the ACC championship? Is it Miami or is it Clemson? And two, if they beat either of them, obviously they get the bye because they're a 10-1 or 11-1 or 12-1, whatever they would be. Conference champion, so they would obviously be getting the bye, and I don't think that'd be enough to put them over, Texas or Oregon or even Ohio State. If would they win the Big Ten? Obviously, I think the Big Ten champ, regardless of who it is going to be your number one overall seed. But in regards to SMU, they could win the ACC and take one of the top 3 seeds. I think they're going to be that 3 seed if the ACC champion. And with Miami, a loss against them in the ACC championship won't be enough to kill your season. I think you're still in the playoffs, but you're on life support, I think. But at that point, I think that's more detrimental for an SMU loss at any point at this point is more detrimental, I'd say, for the Big 12 rather than SMU, because SMU would only have their second loss, and then a Big 12 champ currently would have 2 losses. So that's about the same. So SMU would be dropped out. But at the end of the day, any other team in the Big 12 wouldn't be in anyway. So they're not just playing for their own hopes. They could potentially be playing to knock the Big 12 completely out of the playoffs.
Yeah, they could be. But look, I think either way, the Big 12 champion is going to get in just because they aren't going to have a power conference champion miss the playoff. But yeah, I don't think you put the Big 12 champion at there. But I at the same time, the Big 12 and the ACC are kind of it's the Spider-Man meme because none of the teams are any good. None of the teams are playing anyone because none of the teams are any good. So yeah, it's just an interesting spot with those two teams. Number 21, Arizona State hosted number 14, BYU. Arizona State winning this one 28-23. Obviously, there was a lot of that chaos with the fans running on the field with a second left in the game, and then BYU almost winning the game on the Hail Mary, but ultimately that just fell short. But yeah, a lot of chaos just at the end of the game. But Arizona State gets a nice win. They're now fully in control of the number one spot in the Big 12. And one thing I don't like is their coach. I forget his fucking name right now, but he just keeps basically begging for money in every press conference. He's like, "Oh well, if we want to keep this success, we need to have more money." It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Okay, just shut up. We don't want to hear that. No one wants to hear that shit. So shut the fuck up and let your donors do what they need to do. Stop begging for money. But yeah, no, BYU. Yeah, we kind of hit on it, especially last week, that they might be some frauds, and yeah, they got exposed again this week.
Oh, how the Mormons have fallen. Just like Iowa State, they went from undefeated to yikes, now they have 2 losses in a row. This is it's not all entirely concerning because I believe they're going to play Arizona State again in the Big 12 championship. But at the end of the day, I'm not like we've been saying, we're not confident in either of, these teams being Big 12 champions in the playoffs. So at this point, it's just bragging rights to say, yeah, we made the playoffs and you didn't, so suck it. But, one of us is going to get a bowl game and win, or potentially win our bowl game. The other one is going to get smoked in the playoffs, so who's the real winner here?
Yeah, I mean, either way you look at it, the winner of the Big 12 is not making it out of the first round. Unless they play like a SMU or a Miami or something, or Indiana. Or even Penn State. I mean, Penn State. But I think Penn State would beat anyone in the Big 12, to be honest. Even though Penn State are frauds, they're just not as big of frauds as anyone in the ACC or Indiana. Auburn hosted number 15 Texas A&M. Auburn in fourth overtime wins this one 43-41. And yeah, look, Texas A&M. I'm not high on them. I called it that Auburn was going to win this game. I was right. That's my win for the week. Well, actually, it's one of my 2 wins for the week. But yeah, Texas A&M, I'm not high on them. They need a ton of luck this coming weekend to get to the SEC championship game. But I don't even know if that's going to be possible, even if they do beat Texas and Georgia and Tennessee both lose. I don't even know if that's still possible for them, but it might be. So I don't know. We'll have to look at the tiebreaker situation. But anyways, yeah, Auburn. I mean, the fact that you let Peyton Thorne throw for 301 yards against you and 2 touchdowns, Texas A&M, what the fuck are you doing?
As a Michigan State fan, I know how bad Peyton Thorne is. I completely agree. The fact that he was able to even get this game into overtime is abysmal. And he threw for 300 yards on only 19 completions. This was just a game where, I mean, I'm looking at it. The leaders in passing, rushing, and receiving were all Auburn players. So I would have thought, Auburn probably dominated in this one. But my thing is quadruple overtime. How often do we see that? And to finally not finally, but to see the upset happen, no less, in one of these games that go this far into overtime. It's a really good win for Auburn, and Texas A&M is, yeah, you're bad.
Yeah, you're not good. I mean, you haven't played a lot of great teams this year, and then when you do, you lose. And now you play a not so good Auburn team, and you still lose. It's just not a good look. It's not a good look. The other win that I called out this week, Kansas hosting number 16 Colorado, and Kansas wins 37-21. First of all, there's one thing I want to address here. Shedeur Sanders shoved a ref really, really bad. We've seen players get ejected from games for doing less than what he did, and they didn't even bother. They didn't even throw a flag for that shove. And people are trying to defend, oh, well, it was the heat of the moment, blah, blah, blah. No. He needs to get a game suspension for what he did to that ref. That was egregious. I don't care. Heat of the moment. I don't give a fuck. The only reason why he didn't get a penalty or anything, I think, is just because it's Deion's son. And if the Big 12 did anything about it, the refs did anything about it, you were going to hear about it all from the fans and the media and saying, oh, you're racist and blah, 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 blah. It was terrible. I don't get why the Big 12 hasn't done anything about it yet still, and it's fucking Tuesday night, and they still haven't done anything about it. But if they have any integrity, they will suspend Shedeur Sanders this week. But, it's just the way it goes. But anyways, Kansas, big win here, 37-21. Colorado really just wasn't in this game at all, and Kansas, I called out a win here, and you did me a good job.
This was another fraud exposure yet again. We were like, okay, maybe Colorado could sneak in and win the Big 12 championship, and then they'd be in the playoffs. But those hopes are all gone now. So, congratulations, Deion. Yet again, you and your group of guys have failed to make the playoffs, even in the expanded format. Congratulations.
Womp, womp. Womp,
and you
womp.
lost to Kansas, who is the first team to win 3 consecutive games against ranked opponents with a sub-500 record.
Womp, womp. Like I said, I didn't... Look, Colorado's been better than expected this year, but they ain't that good. Number 17, Clemson hosted the Citadel. Clemson likes to pretend they're a SEC team and does a cupcake week. Clemson wins 51-14. Garbage time touchdowns for the Citadel. I mean, look, Clemson's good. They didn't play their starters in the second half. Understandably so. They're still trying to just even make the ACC title game right now, but they're going to need some luck this weekend. And, that's all I got from that.
Yeah, you said it. The faux SEC team in the ACC has cupcake weekend. They made it so.
Another cupcake here, number 18, South Carolina hosting Wofford. This one, Wofford actually scored in the first half. They scored 9 points in the first half. Impressive. But yeah, South Carolina wins 56-12. Look, South Carolina, you're good, but it's cupcake week. I can't really take anything out of this game.
We've seen really good South Carolina wins this year. Like we said, one half of the SEC was on Cupcake Week last week. This is the other half this week. Good win for South Carolina because they won. We've seen the chaos go around, but, it's a win against a lesser opponent, and I don't think they're even an FBS opponent, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no, Wofford's a FCS team, so...
even more to the point.
Yeah, exactly. Number 22, Iowa State was on the road against Utah. Uh, Iowa State winning this one 31-28, hanging on, by the way. Utah started mounting a comeback in that fourth quarter, and then Utah had a lead in the fourth quarter. It was 28-24, and then, yeah, Iowa State gets the touchdown with a minute 31 left in the game, and that's kind of really it. Iowa State, I mean, they started off the season, really, really well, and then they started to fall off the last couple weeks, and now, yeah, a scary win over a really banged up Utah team, but it's a win, and it keeps your hopes of playing in the Big 12 alive, but I think you also need some luck this weekend. But if BYU loses this weekend and you win, you're there.
That's the biggest point of emphasis right now is winning this game for Iowa State. Not only stopped the bleeding, it kept their hopes alive for the playoffs and the Big 12 championship. And no Cam Rising is no win for Utah, and that's been the theme for them pretty much all year. And he might have been the difference in some of these games, especially one like this. And that's the only thing I can really take away from this is how good this Utah team could have been with him.
Mississippi State hosted number 23, Missouri. Missouri winning this one 39-20. Look, I got really nothing to really take away from this game. I mean, Missouri's offense isn't really all that good, but Mississippi State sucks. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, all around, it was a good win for Missouri against a SEC opponent. But, yeah, just still don't know what this Missouri team really, really is. But, yeah, here we are with them. Good win, though.
I mean, to me, I'm not impressed. This is, with all due respect, the new Vanderbilt in Mississippi State. You let them score 20 points, and you scored 39. You finally had something going on offense. But, this is... I mean, you had Marcus Carroll go for 3 touchdowns on the ground. So that's a really good performance from him. I mean, he had 14 carries for only 61 yards, but again, he had those 3 scores, so that really made up for the lack of yardage. But other than that, I mean, they had 207 rushing yards on 53 attempts. That's a lot of attempts for only 207 yards. They averaged less than 4 yards a carry on the ground. But they had, like I said, 3 scores from Marcus Carroll, who, probably had the best day of all of them. It's just, that was enough for them, and Brady Cook, with only the 1 touchdown through the air, averaged almost 13 and a half yards per completion, only 5 incompletions, so he had a pretty good game.
Yeah, he had a pretty solid game, but yeah, I just I'm not high on this Missouri offense right now. They haven't looked right really all year, and yeah, I can't really take away a whole lot from this, but they're not making the playoffs, so whatever. Rutgers hosted number 25 Illinois. Illinois win this one 38-31 in what I can only describe as the worst defensive play I've ever seen watching college football. Illinois has a touchdown with 4 seconds left in the game, okay, to take the lead. But it was on a Hail Mary pass. Yeah, the receiver was in the middle of the field. There was 6 defenders right behind him when he caught the ball. Not one of them took even remotely decent angle to try and get to the runner with the ball to tackle him and end the game there. They run it up the field and they win. They go up 36-31 off of a failed 2-point conversion, but then they get a safety. So yippee for them. But this was a game Illinois should have lost. Rutgers just beat themselves. And yeah, it was honestly one of the worst defensive plays I've ever seen in my life. It's fucking embarrassing.
one of, if not the worst things, like you said, I've seen. I mean, it was just really poor effort for Rutgers, and I've had a chance to win this one against an Illinois team who I'm not really confident in. I mean, they're 8-3, but they're an iffy, a very shaky 8-3. So at the end of the day, Illinois won the game, but Rutgers, you're a busted, or not a busted coverage. You're just a major lack of effort away from winning this one.
Yeah, major lack of effort, and just yeah, I all those defensive backs need to get fired from their jobs because that was the worst pursuits I've ever seen in my life. Bad angles, bad everything. So yeah. So anyways, that's gonna wrap us up here. Obviously, not a whole lot to talk about in the world of sports outside of football, and we'll always keep talking football whenever we can. But Thursday's episode, we're gonna actually record that today on Tuesday, but because I'll be back up in Michigan, I'm not bringing all my recording stuff up there for that, so we're just gonna do that later. But anyways, rate, review, subscribe, help us out. Let us know what you guys want to see more of course. Happy Thanksgiving. I'll say that on Thursday's episode too, but whatever. Follow us on Twitter or X, whatever the hell you want to call it, at the Andrew and Ian Show. Again, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys on Thursday.